Hello to everyone watching this session. Welcome to Aspirant Study Circle. This is in continuation of the question and answer format learning on this platform. For those of you who are watching this for the first time, please do consider watching the previous sessions. Now, the question today here is explain the reasons behind depreciation of rupee recently. How far are the Forex reserves helpful in determining the macroeconomic stability? Now, we all know the reason why this question is in place, and such a question can be expected in a form of preliminary question next year, or in fact, mains question this year. So now let us break up this question into their parts. Now explain the reasons behind the recent depreciation of rupee, right? So depreciation of rupee. Now we need to state what are the possible reasons. And since it has occurred recently, you need to come up with the most relevant reason first, and then you can state other reasons as well. Now, how far are the Forex reserves helpful in determining macroeconomic stability? So now you need to highlight the effect of Forex reserves, right? Now, what is the role that needs to be highlighted, and how far does it determine the macro? So now we know the reasons why. So the first reason would be the inflation in the United States of America. So you can show this with a pictorial diagram. So because there was high inflation rates in the United States of America, and which was in fact because of the inflation, to fight the inflation. And since the United States economy is a much more preferred economy, developed economies are preferred because they are more stable and they are assuring compared to developing and least developed countries. And hence there would obviously be a flight of the money in form of foreign portfolio investors. And hence what was previously the amount of dollars, what the amount of dollars was present, you would see a reduction in that amount. And hence there would be a demand for the little dollars that are present in the domestic economy. And hence the demand would rise for that, and there would be depreciation of rupees. So you can just show this in a flow diagram for convenience sake. Now, next, what are the other major reasons? Now, we know the other major reasons is there has to be some sort of a minor mistake here. So this would be globalization and interdependency. Now, what exactly is globalization and interdependency? Now, we know supply chains, choke points, right? Meaning, for a product to travel from a country A to a country B, there needs to be a lot of mechanisms in place so that there is a free flow of transaction of goods. And when I say by the term interdependence, when I say interdependence, it means that when a country A has to produce something, that means it will be dependent on raw materials from different countries, right? And then this country will produce and export to country B. And hence there is interdependence. So B is indirectly dependent on all other countries that provide raw material to country A. So this is something that you need to keep in mind. And when I say choke points, in fact, you can talk about weaponization of supply chains as well. So, for example, Malacca Strait, Strait of Hormuz, all such choke points make it very difficult if a nation, if a country like China has hold over such sea lines of communication or such trade routes in particular, that would be advantageous for a particular country, then it would be disadvantageous for other countries. And hence it would be termed as choke points because it could literally determine the trade volume. So all these reasons could be affecting the rupee. Now, political tensions and conflicts. Now, the example that you can give here is obviously Russia and the Ukraine of recently. Now, we are dependent on a lot of oil. In fact, Europe is a lot dependent on gas. So our import bill would rise. And that is the reason why our foreign exchange reserves would have to be depleted because we need to import more. We need to import the same amount for more amount. More amount meaning more rupees. We need to burn more rupees, right? So because the exchange rate is favored, favored in case of the dollars. So similarly, even if you take the case of pandemic, so here a lot of supply chain constraints, the whole network was constrained because of flight restrictions, of travel restrictions. So when there is no ease of flow of goods, there is a very much a chance that the price of the goods may increase. There could be inflation, and all of these tend to have an impact on rupee. Now, so these are the main reasons. So when we talk about the reasons behind the depreciation of rupee, so you can talk about the main reason as this, and then you can substantiate with other reasons as well. Now, what is the role of Forex reserves? Because the question says that how far are the Forex reserves helpful in determining macroeconomic stability, right? So now we need to understand the role of Forex reserves. Now, we need Forex reserves to import crude oil mainly. Now, when we import crude oil, see, now there would be an increase in trade deficit because we import more than what we export, right? And this is with respect to visibles. In the balance of payment, in the current account side, we have visibles and invisibles. And visibles means goods, and goods with respect to what we import is much of crude oil, right? So, and when we do this, there is an increase in trade deficit and it affects our current account. So usually there is always, it's very rare that we find ourselves in current account surplus. It was only in COVID year because we had imported less, right? So, but now things are as usual and there is current account deficit, right? So now in order to fill the gap, in order to fill this deficit, where should the money come from? So the money would come from Forex reserves to adjust. And hence, there will be pressure on exchange rate because the dollar and rupee equation would change. If there are less dollars in comparison to rupees, that means the demand for dollars would be more. As the question says, how far are the Forex reserves helpful in determining macroeconomic stability? Now, how far? That is an interesting question. Now, of course, we know that Forex reserves are very important, but we need to establish a point that there are ill effects of having incredibly large amount of Forex reserves too. So we'll just look into that. Now, the positive aspects. First, we'll look into the positive aspects of having good Forex reserves. Positive one. So that would be balance of payment. Now, when I say balance of payment, that means it puts the government in a better position and it enables the government to face any such India's external or internal financial crisis. And you can remember the 1991 balance of payment crisis, where upon reforms, we were given a free line by the IMF. So you can quote this example. Now, the second would be cost of borrowing. Now, for example, we have good Forex reserves, and then this would mean that it gives a confidence to the investors, meaning if there is confidence in the investors, I mean, if there is confidence that the country is doing well, it has enormous amounts of Forex reserves, then the rating of the country, people or the investors would want to invest more, and hence the cost of borrowing for a nation decreases. So this is again another very underrated benefit. Now, next would be appreciate or depreciate. Now, depending on where you want to keep the rupee pegged at. So when you have large amount of Forex reserves, depending how much demand should the dollar attract or how much demand should the rupee attract. The RBI monitors the balance of payment. It also at the same time monitors various exchange rates. And of course, we are a floating rate exchange fixed and floating rate exchange rate mechanism. That is what goes on right now in India. But at the same time, RBI does intervene. So it gives flexibility when you have such high amount of reserves, right? Now, also, now the government has external debt obligation. Every government does. So when you have such high amount of foreign reserves, it makes it easier for the government. So these are the positive sides that needs to be focused. These are the positive sides. Now, what are the negative sides? So see, these will be the positive sides. Now, these will be the negative sides. Now, the negative sides, one peculiar thing is the Forex reserves that we have are not because of the exports. Now, when we export, we would get dollars, but that is not the way that we have such huge amount of Forex reserves, around $600 billion, right? So that is not the way that we have accrued these Forex reserves, but we have accrued them due to FDI and FPI. And FPI is also known as hot money, foreign portfolio investment, meaning that the investors can, I mean, they are only there in the market for short-term gains. They're not there in for the long run, and they can always, whenever they find better markets, better returns, they would take their money and jump there. So this would mean fluctuation in the dollar and rupee equation. So this would have an effect on macroeconomic stability, right? Next would be inflation. Now, when the RBI decides to pump more rupee and take in dollars or the reverse amount, that would in fact have an effect on inflation. When RBI gives more rupees to take in more dollars from the economy, so when there is an increase in rupees, there would be inflation. And we know what would be the ill consequences of inflation. There would be an increase in interest rates, general increase in interest rates in the economy. The costs of goods would increase. And at the same time, it would hurt the domestic manufacturers too. Because now imagine if today I am purchasing something for 10 rupees, and because of inflation, tomorrow it is 15 rupees, and that product is a raw material where which a domestic manufacturer uses to make an end product. So the cost of the end product too will increase. So hence having such forex reserves has, it's a double-edged sword. So it has to be maintained in such a way that it does not affect our fundamentals, strong macroeconomic fundamentals. And hence, as a way forward, we can mention that we need to diversify. We need to diversify our forex resources. We need not be overly dependent only on dollars. And as we have seen recently, India is trying to manage or conduct its transactions in rupee. It's also trying to internationalize the rupee. So that could be another suggestion or a way forward. And also, you can mention the need for a dedicated plan on foreign exchange reserves. So that would give a very clear-cut plan as to what can be done. And also the dividend that the government gets on these foreign exchange reserves, just by lying there, the RBI gets its dividends, and these dividends are transferred to the government. So effective usage of these resources can also be suggested. So I think we have covered each and every part of the question. Now, we'll just have a quick look at it. The reasons behind the depreciation is covered. How far are the role of the forex reserves is also covered, and how far does it determine the macroeconomic stability? We have seen both sides, right? We have seen both sides, the positives and the negative, right? And then we also have suggested that we need to diversify, and then we need to have a separate plan, national level plan, right, for managing forex reserves. So that's it from me. My name is Prashant. Thank you.